welcome, Jane and Esme. We are delighted to have you in detention today with Kerry and I. And I'm sure you don't really belong there, but just for today. Just for today. But thank you. We've obviously just had the announcement out on social media that the Brain Charity is our chosen charity for messy minds to work with. And like, this is the most excited that Kerry and I have been since we launched Messy Minds. So I've got to say, thank you very much for having us work with you as a chosen charity. And so, yeah, Esme and Jane have joined us today in our podcast. And then basically, we're going to be finding out all about the Brain Charity and what you do. And we'll tell a bit of backstory about obviously how we've come to work with you, which is probably the most random story.
Definitely.
It would be no surprise to anyone that I'm about to tell a random story, but this one is particularly so. But we're really looking forward to finding out, obviously, all the stuff that we can help with and the people that are watching this can help with and what you do. Because I have to say, when we came up to see you, when we walked in the centre, we just felt so at home, and you just gave us the warmest welcome. So hopefully everyone can kind of get that from you on the podcast today. Do you want to just, Esme and Jane, obviously we know Kerry is on here every week and tries to escape but never can. So do you want to just say hi and tell us who you are in relation to the Brain Charity?
Yeah, so I'm Esme. I am senior fundraiser here at the Brain Charity. So I sit on the communications and fundraising team, where our goal is to bring in the money that keeps all of our frontline services running, keeps the roof over our heads, but also make sure that we're really shouting about all the work we're doing, generating awareness of both us as an organisation, support we can provide, but also raising awareness about the range of neurological conditions and neurodivergence that we support.
And hi, I'm Jane. So I'm the training manager. So I lead on the neurodiversity awareness training, which we deliver across the country with a team of associate trainers. And that makes workplaces aware of what is neurodiversity, what are the top 7 differences, as we prefer to refer them to, and what people can do to just adapt their teams so that everybody can thrive in the workplace.
Yeah, that's such a big topic at the moment, isn't it, for businesses? How do you capitalize on people's different minds?
Yes, and it's recognizing that at least 1 in 5 of us will be neurodivergent and bring huge strengths to a workplace if people just understand that the brain can work slightly differently. And it's often just tiny tips of different ways of working and different ways of communicating with each other allows everybody to thrive, but particularly neurodivergent team members.
Yeah, I was amazed actually. There's many people that won't watch this because they think it doesn't apply to them, but with 1 in 5 people being neurodivergent, you're either living with someone that's neurodivergent, you're either working with someone, you're leading someone.
That's what we say. Yeah, our average team is 7, so there's at least one of us in pretty much every team. And as you say, if it's not your team, it'll be a family member or a neighbor, or there'll always be somebody you're interacting with that is neurodivergent.
Absolutely. And well, so let's talk about then how we came across the Brain Charity, because it is the oddest way. And I wasn't expecting it, and certainly when I rang Kerry up and went, I think I found a charity. She was like, "What are you talking about?" But basically, I lived in a village in Derbyshire, and I was just out walking the dog, and I'd come past a house that had a massive scarecrow out the front because it was a scarecrow festival, and I'd kind of stopped, and I think they were selling cakes as well. And we found out they were doing the Great North Run. I think it was the Great North Run, and to raise money for the Brain Charity. And I walked past, and then I caught sight of your logo because you can't miss it. And I kind of like walked past, and then I went reversed back, and there was a little QR code on there, so I scanned it, and I thought this looks really interesting, and then this website came up talking all about the help that you do on offer for neurodivergent, and all of the other work, which I didn't really realize how big neurological conditions are and how wide it is. the breadth that you support in the Brain Charity is quite, well, it blew my mind. There we go. So that's so we then got in touch with you, Esme, and you were like the warmest person. We were absolutely loved our conversation. I think I sent you an email, didn't I? And then I phoned you up saying, we've seen your charity and we really want to support it. And it's kind of gone on from there. And we then said we'd like to come and see your centre, which is based in Liverpool.
Yeah, so we're based in Liverpool, even though our services do have a sort of national reach. And the reason we're in Liverpool is because we actually grew out of a hospital called the Walton Centre. So the Walton Centre is a world-leading neurology and neurosurgery, brain-focused hospital. And it just so happens to be in Liverpool. And in the sort of early 90s, the medical director at the time noticed that, even though it was giving this incredible, life-saving, life-changing care to its patients, it could diagnose, it could perform those, emergency surgeries, it was researching treatments. Patients were coming in, having all that incredible medical support, and then they were just going back out into the world, into the community, and there was not really anything there to support them. Some of these people maybe had, really life-changing conditions, things like stroke or a brain injury, where it affected them sort of physically and mentally, and they couldn't live the life that they'd had before the incident. But they were just being sent back out as if, get back to it. And so we really started as an information charity. We have our community hub, which started as a community centre. It's still very much the community centre that's at the heart of everything we do. And we're essentially a massive library with lots of different, resources, information, research on different neurological conditions. The thing that makes us really different is that we do support all neurological conditions. So there's actually over 600. Anything that affects the brain and the spine and the nervous system. And so, yeah, we were just a kind of a hub for, a friendly face, for information, especially for people who had been diagnosed with a rare condition. They maybe didn't know where to turn. We support people who have conditions that are incredibly rare, things like HPX or Alice in Wonderland syndrome, and they really affect only a handful of people. There's not a dedicated charity or dedicated support service to those conditions because they are so unusual. So just to know that there's someone out there who had heard of it, and we don't claim to be experts in every condition, nobody could be, but if you come to us, regardless of whether you have a really common, well-known condition, or you have, a condition that affects 5 people, you get the same level of care and support from us.
It's just vast, isn't it? And it was really weird because when we came up, I know that we obviously are heavily involved in the neurodivergent area, but when we came up, you were then talking about like hydrocephalus and strokes and that, and I kind of didn't even cross my mind because my dad, he suffers from hydrocephalus, and there was really very limited. We didn't know anything about it. And actually, since I've been up to see you, my parents have joined like these online support groups because they didn't know they were there, and I'm like, have a look. But it's amazing. I have to say though, one of the highlights, and Kerry, I know that Kerry hasn't stopped talking about it since we came to see you, is in your centre is the cafe, wasn't it, Kerry?
Yeah, the Brain Food Cafe. I just remember we walked in, and it was so welcoming. Everybody there was so welcoming, but the smells. It was.
You should try working here. It's just impossible to resist.
I couldn't do it. I'd spend all day at the Brain Food Cafe. It was, but there was, we were there fairly early in the day, so it was well before lunchtime. But there was a really nice buzz there. But to have that as the welcome as you come in, an area where you can sit, have a coffee, get some of the most amazing smelling food, but I think just be together, and there was a mix of people around. Everyone was really nice and chatty, and then Esme, you gave us the grand tour of the centre, and it is just mind-blowing. And I think when we went up to the neuro gym,
Yeah, we're particularly proud of the Neuro
Very
Gym.
proud.
Yeah, and as you say, in the cafe, it's like a community kind of cafe, really, and it's everybody that comes says, because everybody can just be themselves. And actually, there's a children's workshop running next week for the a half-term October camp. Any children with neurological condition and their siblings can come and join. Previously, we ran it last summer. And what was so key for them is they were saying often if they try and go to a summer camp over the summer holidays and they have got a neurological condition, sometimes they're excluded or they can't do the activities or they feel left out or kind of thing, and people don't understand how they might be presenting. Whereas here they can come and just be totally, enjoy the fun and be totally accepted and thrive with who they are. So we're particularly proud of that, aren't we? And the gym itself.
I mean, it's the same ethos behind both the gym and the cafe as well, that these are spaces that should be available to everyone, and for a variety of reasons they aren't always. It's not always something malicious. It could just be that a public high street gym or a kind of busy cafe like a Costa Coffee. It could just be that, for especially someone who's neurodivergent, for example, the lights are too bright, it's too loud, they don't know what the routine is to go make an order or like how to use a machine, they don't know who to ask, and that can be really anxiety inducing. It could be, in other cases that it's a physically inaccessible space, there's not room for wheelchairs, or a gym is downstairs, or particularly with a gym that machinery is designed for able-bodied people, so you need both hands to pull down whatever this is, that one, your bars or lift your dumbbells or whatever. You can tell I go to the gym all the time. And just differences aren't taken into account, and so that's really what we aim to do here as a charity, is provide those spaces where no matter what, you are welcome, it's accessible. We've got equipment that is semi-machine powered, so that if you don't have equal amounts of strength, so you've had a stroke and it's affected one half of your body and that side of your body doesn't have the same capacity for strength as the other, the machine helps you use it so that you're getting equal amounts of support, which in a regular high street gym, that's just not something that is really considered. And then same with the cafe, it's just being a space where you can come in and you can be yourself. We've had clients in the past who've said their condition maybe has some like physical characteristics or mannerisms, thinking someone who has Tourette's might have like tics, someone with Parkinson's might have tremors, and those are things that sort of make them stand out in a way that they're not always comfortable with in a public space, but knowing they can come to the Brain Charity Cafe, the Brain Food Cafe, and no one looks at them funny, no one thinks twice. We've got things in place for people who maybe have seizures. It's a totally safe space with people who understand what you're going through, and in a lot of cases are going through something similar themselves. So you also get that kind of peer connection and peer support at a time you might be feeling quite isolated and lonely because you've had a diagnosis and you don't know how it's going to affect your day-to-day life. To have someone there who's like, oh yeah, I got diagnosed a year ago and I found actually, have you thought about getting your bus pass, and did you know that this thing's available to you? So even before people access our kind of official services and come to the gym, there's just like a really warm community that's ready and waiting to sort of help as much as they can.
We definitely felt that, didn't we? I have to say thanks for touching on the big light as well. Like, because whenever if anyone wants to upset me, just put the big light on, because that. My husband's learned to ask now before he puts the big light on. Like, don't do it suddenly. Don't. Why have you put that on for?
It's like the sensory processing. It's a big like shock to the system, and it's really, and a lot of neurodivergent conditions, it is about sensory processing and either being oversensitive or undersensitive to like smells and sight and sounds. So even things like I think the training maybe touches on this sometimes, but we had a really lovely lady who came in and she said, because of coming here, I've gone to my office and said, can we change all the clocks to ones that don't tick?
Yeah, I get that.
It was just a sensory nightmare for her. And she said, little things like that we implement and we recommend that are very, not expensive, really small, but they just make a slightly nicer environment for everyone. Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? What you know when you're in the know, and how it's just about opening that door and making sure people are aware of these things.
It doesn't have to cost money either. Like these things that you're talking about, even something so silly as if I'm cooking dinner, my husband would say, "Sure, tell the kids to come down." I'm like, no, definitely not until it's completely on the table, because they'll come down and then one of them they're having a conversation, then I'll put the TV on, and then all of this, and then before you know it, I'm like, right, I can't think straight. And or someone says, "Do you want some help?" Well, probably, but I don't know in what order I'm going to do things. So actually, no, I'll just get on and do it myself. But they're like, they don't cost anything. It's just understanding, isn't it?
Exactly that. There's lots of tips that translate similarly to like a work environment. We would say like the classic one is like, you know, when you get suddenly the manager's like, right, all come for a hurdle. I want to tell you about something, you know, and it's like, for most of us, that's a distraction, and we were halfway through an email, or we're just about to make a phone call to somebody. You've got the idea in your head. It's like, okay, right, we'll go along and see what Sarah wants then. But for your neurodivergent colleague, that can really cause a lot of stress and anxiety, not just at that time, but for the future, because they don't know, when am I next going to be summoned to a meeting? I don't know why I'm going. I don't know what information they're going to ask of me or what they're going to impart to me. And most of us, unless it's a crisis situation, if we just put a bit of thought into it, we actually can plan that actually, like, yeah, on a Tuesday, I'm going to update the team on X and I'm probably going to need Y from them. And on Thursdays, we need to have this ready for the weekend ahead. So 2:00 Thursday afternoon, we can all meet and we need to do this. It's rare in most situations, even in operational areas, that things don't happen on a regular pattern and a routine. And it's just a bit of forethought from most of us that can allow all of our colleagues to just, as you say, not be anxious and be prepared for things that they need to know.
Yeah, and even for neurotypical, you know, colleagues.
Exactly.
How many times you walked into a meeting and there's been no agenda and you sat there like, oh God, why am I even in this meeting? And you think, if an agenda just came out 10 minutes before, you could be like, oh, I'm prepared for that point. I know when they come in. So, oh, could we move that to the start because I actually have to dart out for something else? It's just like good business practice anyway. And if it makes everyone across the board feel more comfortable and more secure and reduces any anxieties, then it's easy and worth it.
I know we are definitely going to do an episode of this on RSD, because it's such a, where you've just touched on that, and it's this anxiety that if my boss would phone me up and say, can we have a chat in the morning at 8:30 all night, I would think, well,
yes,
I can't think of anything that I've done, but I'm definitely going to get the sack in the morning, like, you know, that's, and it won't go away. You can't think about anything else until that time has passed, and then it'll be nothing. You think, oh, all that energy that I've just used for no reason. And that's how it's free of charge to implement something like that, isn't it?
Exactly. We had exactly that, Joe, recently, because I had a meeting. Well, my regular meetings were with our CEO, and I was working from home, doing my one-to-one the following morning, and she came up with a meet in the seminar room, and I'm like, and you say for that, to a couple of seconds, I was like, why am I in the seminar room when we always have our one-to-ones in her office, kind of thing. And of course, like, I processed it and remembered, actually, unfortunately, we'd been having leaks in the building, so they weren't in their office. They were now working downstairs. But all it needed was like a few little notes, just so we avoid the leaks. Let's meet in the seminar room. And for me, as you say, I processed it after a couple of minutes of thinking, oh yeah, nobody's in the CEO office. But for somebody else, another colleague, that really genuinely could have been enough to, sleepless nights and a lot of anxiety for just like 2 sentences.
I know, crazy, but that's the thing. It's just it all comes back to understanding and how different people react in different situations, isn't it? And so we did have a good time in your office. We will definitely be back up to your centre, that is for sure. Jane, and so I know you're head of training and you spend a lot of time educating companies and organizations on how they can get the most out of their neurodivergent workforce, because it is very much if companies are running that at the minute as a kind of a tick box exercise because we think we need to employ, they are missing a trick there. So tell us a little bit about your training that you do.
Yeah, so thanks, Jo. Yeah, so it is quite common actually, that people will approach us and said, oh yeah, we just want to do an awareness for everybody, so let's just do an hour's lunch and learn. And as you say, I normally, if we have the opportunity to have a chat to them, it's okay. This really is a culture change for all of us. Because you're recognizing what society is already awakening up to, that it's 1 in 5 of us. So it's across all of your teams, all your managers, your senior leadership team. It's highly likely there'll be several because of their strengths that they've brought and they've succeeded with it. So do you really just want to go in and just do an awareness to everybody? It's unlikely, because team members then, if they go to their line manager, say, oh, actually, yeah, we just done the course, and actually I am ADHD and dyslexic. It's almost like the rabbit in the headlight of the manager thinking, oh, okay, I was sat next to you on that training. What does this now mean? So fair to say is like, let's unpick it with our line managers. Let them understand in true essence, okay, what are the top 7 differences? What the co-occurrence, so the high likelihood that people will be diagnosed with several, and what strengths and challenges do they bring? And how, as a line manager, can I understand that and start role modeling it, that I can change the way we communicate with each other, change how I run team meetings, change how we set up an office, maybe having some flexibility of where people work, how they work. Let's understand that before I go out to my whole team and say, okay, I've done the training, and now let's invite everybody else to come and have the training, and let's trial. Can we now do questions in advance, maybe of interviews? As you say, can we all make sure we've got agendas before we have meetings? Are we happy that sometimes people have camera off if they've joined a team call from home, because then they're a lot far more comfortable? Let's just have the trust there that they are paying attention. So we will go out and we will start ideally with the line managers, in-depth half hour with them, do some case studies to try and pull out, okay, how can this best work in our team? And then we'll come back and we'll do a workshop to everybody, so that everybody has a common understanding of the terminology that we're all now using, and what we're all going to try and achieve together.
That make a huge impact. I think, as you say, I think when people are diagnosed with a neurodivergence and they don't actually necessarily want to even speak to their employer about it because they're worried about the perception and the stigma that goes with it. And of course, if you've run large teams, particularly Kerry and I did in our old employment, if you've run large teams, you know that you need a mixture of neurotypical and neurodivergent minds to be able to deliver things. But people are terrified to talk about it. And you just think, well, actually, when you start, how do you start having that conversation with your line manager? And as a line manager, how do you respond to it if you don't really know about it? We can do far better with it, can't we? Your training sounds like it absolutely addresses that.
Yes, and all of the trainers are neurodivergent themselves, so they bring that lived experience and knowledge, and there isn't a wrong question ever, so they're very happy to be challenged and to bust the myths that some people might have out there about neurodiversity.
Did you say it was Greg is in your team that you
Greg the lead trainer?
Yes. I've probably got his name wrong, because and you could forgive that in this environment, because someone tells me the name, I'll just, like, my brain just shreds it. It's like it's got a shredder. Hi, I'm so and so, and I'm like, right, I'm desperately trying to remember your name now, so I can't. But as soon as you tell me that information, it just goes straight into a shredder, and then I have to ask again, and then I'm like, oh no, I can't ask the 3rd time. But Greg, I'm excited to meet Greg, because I think you said he would be great to be on one of our podcasts. He sounds
absolutely. He'd actually love to be in detention.
Yeah, great. So we'll definitely get Greg in detention. So that we've got a note of that. But it does sound good. And how can people access your services then, if they are listening to this and they weren't aware of you before? Or how can they get in touch, when, as particularly organizations, how can they get in touch and access your training? And
so for the training, because we run the training online and in person, and that can be anywhere across the UK. We've also got a trainer over in Belfast, so we go as far as, like, you know, we go across to Northern Ireland too, and we have been literally up and down the country to corporates, universities, NHS trusts. So you can initially inquire on our website, and it's like, training at the braincharity.org.uk. And we just launched in September, we've launched an e-learning module as well. So that suits many organisations that can't necessarily get their staff all together at one time, or a different learning style. It's obviously an e-learning module that they can log on to, they've got access to for 3 months, and it's self-paced. They can go back and repeat, they can like pause, and there's also some spotlights and a bit more in depth. So actually it suits also the learning style, maybe as a theorist that like that bit more detail than they would get in a webinar. And the workshops, you do full days, half days, and 1 hour, which work really well as a lunch and learn session.
Brilliant.
We deliver the training in-house as well, so we very much practice what we preach here. So I've had both the 1 hour kind of lunch and learn session and the line manager training, and can vouch that it is, you know, really brilliantly put together. The trainers develop it themselves, so they really draw on their own experiences, and, you know, they are very, very generous in giving their, you know, lived experience and bringing up kind of personal examples. I know Greg gives one that always stuck with me, that Greg has ADHD, and when he was a kid in secondary school, he struggled to remember his timetable. So the kind of mental load that gave him meant that he just took every single book for every single class every single day into school.
Bodybuilder then with that rucksack.
And so I think like it's really illustrated the sort of the mental load, but also how that then, you know, rippled out, because then he says, you know, I had a bad back and sore shoulders like for 5 years through secondary school because I was physically carrying the weight of my neurodivergence, because that's how, you know, it kind of manifested. That was sort of one of the coping mechanisms he came up with. So I think, it's incredible that they're so happy to share that and really go in deep and bring their experiences, because I think, you know, a lot of training can often be that kind of tick box, you know, this is ADHD, it means this, and signs will be not paying attention, and this is autism, it means this, and just end up, you know, having a tick box exercise. But our trainers really bring it to life, and I think that's why after training's been delivered, a lot of people we've heard since have then come forward and disclosed, because it's created such a kind of open and welcoming environment for those conversations.
And I think that makes all the difference. I mean, Jo, I know you've talked about your experience and that initial I've been diagnosed. So I think you've got the pre. So that training, I think, would benefit people who'd not been diagnosed. So actually people have more of an understanding. But I think it's then, as you say, it opens it up. You can have the conversation, you can feel a lot more comfortable in, I'm going to tell you I've been diagnosed with ADHD, and it's not going to be a concern to me, because you're not going to think that I'm lesser. That certainly wasn't the case.
No, it comes definitely from a strengths-based approach of the strengths that they're bringing to the workplace, and then understanding, with my strengths, I have got a few challenges, and this is how I'm managing it myself, and this is how you can also support me too. And as you're saying, Kerry, it's quite common that delegates will be there going, so my daughter's been diagnosed at school, so I've come to learn more. And as the training goes on, it makes them realize that actually this is possibly also me, and I've been living with it, potentially been masking it, which is also very common with the females and with the girls, and allows them to then think, okay, but now this is being discussed at work, and in my next one-to-one, yes, I think I feel I'm more comfortable to actually bring this up with my manager and discuss what's been highlighted, and because it's a culture change really for organizations, and it's allowing people to be who they are. We always say like 98% of people we suggest go to work to do a good job. There's probably 2% that need a different training program called performance management. 98% of us, we want to come to work and do a good job. And it's the neurodivergent colleagues are just saying, if you can just give me X and Y and allow me to do Z, I can just do this job so much better, and I'm so much happier, and I'm myself doing it.
Yeah, and having the diversity across the team, there's a great exercise in the line manager training where, you build a team out of sort of, an imaginary group of people with different strengths and different weaknesses. And when you look at the kind of team you've assembled, it does have that mix of different minds, different ways of processing, different, skills. And when you've got a sort of neurodiverse team, you've got people in it builds up to like a whole almost. You need someone who's got big creative, throw ideas at the wall kind of thinking, and you need someone who's really granular and on time, and between those two people you've got someone who has big ideas and can action them within a deadline. And individually neither of them might be totally on task, but together, and then with support from line managers and a wider team, that's like the dream team to make this thing happen.
Yes, you certainly wouldn't be sat here today without Kerry, that is for sure.
I thought you were describing us then, Esme. You need one of these and one of these, and I thought that's why this works.
It's a bit yeah, because nobody's perfect, but a team can be, and it's just allowed to actually be who they are, and allowed to discuss, these are my strengths, this is what I know I'm really good at, this is what I can really bring to the team, but I do struggle here. It'd be neurotypicals and neurodivergence, that none of us are perfect, are we? We all do have our strengths that we play to. It's just allowing everybody to express them really, and people to understand it.
I think there's so many people at the minute that feel almost that they're I'm talking about ADHD at the minute, because in some of the forums that I've seen and been and joined since Massey Mind, the way that people are dealing with their ADHD at the minute is from a negative base. So which is obviously why we designed the coaching program, because we were thinking you've got so many strengths in there, and I know there's this ongoing, is ADHD, is it superpower, is it not? I mean, it is exhausting, quite frankly, because your brain is never off. Even when you're in bed, it is never off. So you can have a really hard day, and then everyone else would sit down, watch TV and think, yeah, I'm chilled out now, but your brain is still going, and so it never switches off. So that can be really exhausting. But these forums, I am seeing people so like being controlled almost by their ADHD, and in such a rabbit hole with it, because they don't know, they probably don't really understand themselves very well, and they're working probably an employer that doesn't understand what environment they need to be. If I look back at when I left school, I was told to go and get an office job. And of course, no one knew I had ADHD then at school, but that couldn't have been worse advice to go and get an office job, because it's repetitive and I was bored. And that's just, it's almost just, you're just then masking, and it's exhausting. So I think it is a concern that so many people are struggling at the moment, but obviously with the support that you give and there's plenty of people that really want to do, help people with coaching, and helping organizations see that this is the future. Get your neurodiverse teams built, and your performance is going to skyrocket.
Yeah, absolutely. There are certain organizations that actively recruit neurodivergent candidates because they know in the right role they're 8 times more effective than a neurotypical. GCHQ, sort of pattern spotting and certain detailed focused work suits a neurodivergent candidate way more than a neurotypical. It's all playing to our strengths and finding where we can be best suited, as you say, like for yourself. Office role definitely wasn't for you, Jo. Somewhere that was more stimulating, more challenging, kind of more interaction, get the dopamine hit, kind of get was definitely more for you, which is
absolutely
great you found it.
It is. It took a while, but I know in our podcast coming up next week, we're going to be talking about how AI and artificial intelligence is going to be in the future replacing more of the neurotypical roles and tasks and jobs, because anything that's repetitive can usually be automated, and how the the employers have got to get braver and more accepting and understand more the neurodivergent mind, because that, it's going to turn with the automation of certain things and certain roles. So I think that it's a really exciting space to be in. But we're going to be discussing that on next week's podcast, and then I'm hoping as well we can bring you guys back in the future to talk about all sorts of interesting topics that we've got, and Greg, because I need to meet Greg.
You definitely want to put Greg in detention. You'd be fascinated with him. But that's ultimately, and this is just my theory, but I would say, in the future, when you're making a team up, it is almost like you would be saying, well, I'd like a couple of neurotypicals, because we're kind of jack of all trades but masters of none. So we can just bob along the middle, as you're saying. A lot of the role probably the AI will be doing alongside us. And then I actually want the neurodivergent talent of the creativity and the kind of the pattern spotting. I want all this as well, because actually a lot of what was done a neurotypical role is the assistant AI is actually very efficient at.
It is. Yeah, the outside the box thinking, isn't it? And it's sometimes I'll have a thought and Kerry's like,
where did that come from?
You need to have some time off. But it'll be the most random thought, which is always comes around 2 o'clock in the morning. But probably have your phone on silent all night.
No, I'm ready and receiving.
But it's those crazy ideas that you think, well, that could work, but you just
But I think that is what you need. I mean, you created Messy Minds 18 months ago, but to actually get us to the position we are, that just wouldn't have happened without the big ideas, let's try this now, or thought of this early hours of the morning. And I think that's what makes, I think we are, as a company, a good example of you do need a really solid blend. And although there's only 2 of us, I think together, I've got all bases covered along the middle. But I don't think we would have been as creative and trying to reach as far as we're trying at the moment without those thought processes.
We definitely wouldn't have emails, because we had to migrate our emails from one domain to the other day, and Kerry has done really well at that, but I'd have been just buying a new email address. But so I would really appreciate you coming on and talking about Brain Charity, and I know we're really keen to get Messy Minds up and running, and as you know, we will be donating £100 to the Brain Charity from everyone that goes through our coaching academy. So we're really excited to grow with you and for you to benefit from that. And of course, we're going to be featuring you on our podcast as much as we can, as much as you'll have us. But we're very, very excited to be working with like-minded individuals, because there was no doubt that when we met you, and we had that little meeting in your centre, it just felt like we were just among our people, and that's exactly what Kerry and I wanted, a charity that it matches our branding, it's thinking in the same creative way, and we've really found that with you, so we're absolutely delighted to be working with you.
We're thrilled. As a charity, we're always looking for the companies and businesses to partner with, but to us it's really important that they match our values. It has to be people who care about our cause, and that embedded in their company is the values, and it doesn't have to be perfect. That's why we've got training, so we can kind of help, but as long as that sort of spark is there and the compassion is there, our values are kindness and curiosity and commitment, so that's what we look for in our partners. It's absolutely brilliant that you guys reached out to us.
Yeah, that's great. It's great. Well, thank you for coming on. And what we'll do is we'll put a little link in the video afterwards so people can connect to your website and find out a little bit more about you. I think you did freeze for a minute there, but I'm sure no one noticed. But we'll put. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we've got it again.
The AI can arrive back there as well, Joe. But I think you were saying that you put a link to our website.
Yes, I am. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We'll put a link into the website so people can visit you. And we'll have you back on the podcast again. So if you've enjoyed this podcast, obviously subscribe to it and give us a thumbs up. Give the Brain Charity a thumbs up, as we did. And then look out for some guest appearances coming up over the next few weeks and months. And we're definitely getting Greg in detention. So if you can,
I'll go back and warn him now.
Yeah, if you could. Well, thank you very, very much. And
thank you, ladies.
Bye now.